Welcome to the With Winning in Mind podcast. I'm Heather Sumlin along with my co-host Troy Bassham, and today we're talking about lessons from the Super Bowl. We just watched I watched the whole thing.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. I did.
Look at you.
I did pretty good. I enjoyed the Super Bowl. So tell me, because I don't always watch the whole thing. Let's be honest. I'm not
a sports guru.
I watch it with people, right? So I'm not really in the game. I'm just kind of like the host or whatever, or talking or so. But this time, I mean, I was in my chair the whole time. I was watching the whole thing.
You watched the commercials. You probably watched halftime.
I actually watched the game more than commercials this time because that was when I chatted with people, was during commercials.
Oh, I gotcha.
So I missed some of the good ones.
I was watching the game but I didn't really pay attention to the commercials. I was dry cleaning some comics during the commercial. That's what I was doing.
Dry cleaning comics. Mm-hmm. Okay, because we watched a comedy show yesterday, when you said comics, I was thinking people.
No, I'm talking about comic
I'm like, how do you dry clean a comic? You're talking about books. Okay.
I was going through my collection, and I'm like, I got too many books I don't know why I bought during the pandemic because I got back into the hobby. I was kind of got into that in college. Like a lot of people in the 90s got into Spawn and so forth and Image Comics, and people kind of got back, and there was this big crave, and I got into that, and but I quickly got out of it because I got married, so that ruined that.
That ruined comics for you? Getting married ruined comics?
Well, because you're limited how much money you have.
That's true. And then you have to ask, is it okay if I...
And so anyway, the pandemic hits, and next thing you know, you're like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to look at some of these books, and started reading a few and kind of went that direction. And then once things started getting back to where we're working, I kind of put that aside and then went more into collecting older stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was taking some of the older stuff and looking at it, and there's just some basic, I'm not an expert by any means, but there's some basic cleaning. Like you could take some dirt off the comic and that kind of stuff, and and you could press the book to make it more valuable.
Oh, okay.
If you want to send it to get graded and put it in a encapsulation.
Completely different than where my brain went when you first started dry cleaning comics.
So I was kind of just doing that during the commercials and with some of the older comic books, and just kind of see what I had, what I want to keep, and what I want to put in a box to kind of get rid of. And so I really want to pay attention to the commercials this year. Yeah. I was really paying more attention to the game. So when the game was on, I was watching it, and I thought some really good stuff in the game that we could talk about today.
Good. Let's talk about Super Bowl.
Well, first of all, what did you think about it?
Well, so it was a very well matched game. And again, I'm not a football expert, but I loved the fact that even before the game began, you saw the stats were very similar with each team, which I thought, okay, then it's going to be a pretty fun game to watch from a spectator's perspective because it's probably not going to be a blowout. So that was kind of cool. You had
Well, you had a team because you like the Chiefs.
I love the Chiefs. Yeah, I like the...
You know why she loves the Chiefs? You probably don't know this about Heather, but tell the audience why you like the Chiefs so much.
So I've met the family. Gracie is one of my clients.
The family, like they're supposed to know who you're talking about.
The Hunts, I think. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty... If you know the Chiefs, you know the Hunts.
The Chiefs. That's what she's in the know.
They're incredible people, and so I absolutely love the family behind the team. And I love how dedicated they are to their faith. I love just really great people. Just so I've got to root for the Chiefs. So
root for people.
You know.
Yep.
Tavia's great. Gracie's great. Ava's great. Like their whole family is amazing. So.
And I was being a Cowboy fan. I was rooting against the Eagles. So
yeah. Okay. So in my family, that was happening as well because.
So, however, I've grown up to where I was a Cowboy and Oilers fan growing up. But I would watch certain players that I appreciate the way they played the game. I thought was good. I liked the way Dan Marino played when he was with Miami, and then I watched, of course, how can you not like Bo Jackson? When he was playing, Earl Campbell was my favorite players to watch when I was a little kid growing up. So I have players from different teams I would root for, and then now when you have the Red Zone and you have other ways of DirecTV, when you watch all these games, you can really get attached to certain players. So I was really curious to see how well Jalen Hurts would play in the Super Bowl because, he's been playing really well. And now you go to the Super Bowl. How is he going to play? I thought the quarterbacks on both teams played excellent. I thought they did really well for the pressure they were in. One, been there, done that. but not 100%. How is he going to handle it? And the other one, a lot of pressure on him. Can he do well? And I thought he did exactly what he needed to do. Made some really good passes and had some key players that just, you need your key players to show up in big games. And both of these teams, key players, showed up. So the first lesson I think to take away is that when you need to be at your best, you got to go with what you know. So in a team sport, what do you know? I know this person is the go-to when we're in this situation. This person the go-to in this situation. And that's exactly what both teams did. Brown needed to be there as a receiver for the Eagles. Played great. Had that one great catch, for a touchdown. Was awesome. And then, of course, Kelsey. Who you're going to go to when you're passing.
Which Kelsey?
Travis Kelsey. We're talking about catching.
There were two.
Yes, we're talking about.
That was cool. I'm sorry. That was just cool to have. Both teams had brothers, like the brothers on each team, and then who's the mom going to root for?
Well, she's going to root for the one that's on the field. That's what she's going to do.
Well, there we go. That makes a lot of sense.
Because they both play on the offense, so there you
go. Then she's going to root for the one.
Yeah, so she was cheering all the time.
She's not going to root for a team. She's just going to root for her son.
So I heard someone make a comment years ago that when you need a play, you go with the play, but when you need to end the game, you forget about the playbook and you go to the best players.
Okay.
And I thought that was interesting. And one of the things I saw last night was a little reversal of that.
Okay.
And that was, you made this point before we started this, as far as the end of the game, the player did not score a touchdown.
No. And I felt like that had to be so hard to stop just shy of the goal, because everything in your being, I would think, not that I've ever played football, except in the backyard, because Brian thought that I should try out for the football team in 6th grade. That was funny. But I don't know what that feels like to be in that position, but I would imagine that your job is to score goals, and for you to stop, like intentionally stop before a potentially game-scoring touchdown at the Super Bowl, that's got to be against human nature.
Yeah, from a fan perspective, I did not like that at all, because I want to watch them score and I want to watch the other team come back and try to.
I didn't want to watch the other team come back. Like,
well,
I wanted to watch the Chiefs win.
No, not from your perspective. From a fan perspective, I didn't have
a fan.
It's not like I don't have a team to really root for, right? So indirectly, I do, because the Hunts, but I've never met the Hunts, so I'm looking at.
We need to make that happen.
Fan.
You would be a fan.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we need to be able to have good entertainment value, because I'm watching the Super Bowl every year, no matter who's in it, to be entertained. Unless one of my, Cowboys are in it, I'm definitely rooting for the Cowboys. But in this case, I didn't have anyone I really wanted to root for. Right. Like when Brady was with Tampa, I was kind of like, okay, I want to see him. Can he win one for another team? I want to see that. Okay, so from a fan's perspective, it would have been nice. They score. Can you score with a limited amount of time? March back down. What could the Eagles do? That would have been fun. But for the strategic strategy of, okay, I need to go down, let the clock run down, let the kicker win the game for us, and then we're good to go. I thought that was really good. It's interesting when you look at it. It's like you need to know where you are, and it pays big dividends. And he knew where he was. I'm in a position not to score a touchdown. I'm in a position to put us in this position. He went there. It was almost like, hey, we want you to score so we have a chance to come back, maybe send it to overtime. He goes, nope, boom. So I wonder, was that prepped? Did they say, hey, look, if you have a chance to score, don't. Just go down. Or if it was something that he did, it'd be interesting. I have to talk to McKinnon about that, because I don't know if that happened.
I think it's so smart, though. It's playing smart. And maybe that's another potential lesson, is that when you're in a game that matters or a situation that matters, make sure you're making the smart choice. Not necessarily what your heart wants you to do, but what your head needs you to do, if that makes sense. Because
speaking of smart, because we were talking about this topic beforehand, and our compadre back there, one of them, Lucas, was talking about how he thought the game plan was being done. Because I brought the statement that one of the learning moments I thought was great is the adjustments that the Chiefs made. Andy Reid made adjustments for the second half that paid off dividends. They were basically, I thought the Eagles were going to win. I mean, I already thought this. At halftime, I'm like, okay, Eagles are going to wind up winning because I don't want them to win. And number two, Jalen Hurts is playing really good. I think he's the first quarterback to rush for 2 touchdowns and throw for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And he's playing really good. He's going to wind up having 2 more touchdowns. He'll be MVP, and I'll have to hear this all summer long. And so they're going to win. Totally not thinking about, wait a minute, who knows the Eagles really well? Andy Reid used to coach for the Eagles.
Right.
You know, so he knows the history of the Eagles and that kind of stuff. And he makes some adjustments. Obviously, it's a different team, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But he made some adjustments. It worked well for him. And I thought it was really, really interesting. When things aren't going well, you want to change up what you're doing. He made some good changes to do this. So I thought it was really good. But what Lucas pointed out was something that I totally missed. And he's like, you notice they ran the same, they scored touchdowns
Chiefs.
twice.
Yeah.
The Chiefs did, and they ran the same play, just on one to the left, one to the right, and it goes to show you that when something's working, keep doing it. But what did Andy Reid do? He just changed it a little bit. Yeah, we're going to run to the left this time instead of the right. It worked before. Why wouldn't it work again? Sure enough, it worked.
So when something's working, well, it's kind of like going back
Keep
to
doing
some
it.
of the principles, right? When we do our Training to Win webinar that you like to teach so much, which we need to do that again soon. So y'all stay tuned. We'll do another Training to Win webinar soon. But you talk about some of these principles, and one of them is when things aren't going well, you change what you're doing.
Change what you're doing.
And then when things are going well, you keep on going.
Keep doing it. It's
Keep
like,
doing what works, and if it stops working, you change it up. I mean, it makes sense.
so if you're a tennis player and you're acing a person because they just can't get to that serve, what are you going to do? I'm going to keep doing that. And you're the one that needs to make the adjustment, not me. I'm just going to keep doing the same thing
Right.
over and over. You make the adjustment.
Right. When you figure it out, then I'll adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in most cases, adjustments have to be made to be competitive. But until then, I'm going to keep doing it. Now, what if the adjustments is made? What do you have to do? Well, then you have to adjust. Knowing when to do these things is critical. But I thought it was really interesting because in the Super Bowl, one of the things that I love about the Super Bowl, is the halftime is long, which means I can go to the store and get more snacks and not miss the game.
So I love that the halftime is long because I typically enjoy the halftime show.
Yeah, I don't.
So, and I did. I enjoyed the halftime show.
Not saying they're great. They're probably really good. I just find it a great opportunity to.
Well, if you need to run an errand, I guess that's a good time since you don't have to miss the actual game.
Yeah, I know. Plan ahead. You should get
But
more
I-
popcorn and soda, but I don't.
Do you think that's another lesson too? Is that when I looked at my Facebook feed about the halftime show, half of the people loved it, half of the people didn't like it. And I think that goes to show that you're never going to please everyone.
No, you're not.
And if you're a performer or you're somebody who is going out for something or you're putting yourself in the limelight, you're never going to please everybody.
Well, if you're talking about music, there's certain people that are not going to like that particular genre of music, no matter what you do, no matter who the artist is. They always have great artists. There's no question they go out and get top artists. But last year's Super Bowl, it was a specific genre. And if you didn't like that, you're not going to relate to it and you're not going to like it. And then some people that are kind of on the fence about it and they're like, yeah, I kind of like it. And then they look at it and they're like, wow, this elevates it, maybe gets me more interested in it. But I just look at it as an opportunity to get something else done, come back, and then focus on the second half of the game.
Well, I think because I like performing and I enjoy music and everything, I enjoy the halftime show.
Yeah, I will say, Frances watched the halftime. She didn't watch the game, but she watched halftime.
Well, see, there we go.
I'm like, hey, do you want to go to the store with me? It's halftime. No, I'm watching the halftime show.
Yeah.
But you're not watching the game. Like, I'm in a different room watching the game, and she's watching, like, a movie. But somehow she knew when halftime was, and she's going to watch the halftime. And then you talk about mixed reviews. Our youngest daughter's at the house, and she didn't care for it.
I liked so somebody I was looking at some Facebook reviews and somebody made the statement. They said, can you imagine how difficult it is to get that many people, the choreography that it takes to get that many people in a stadium setting? Where do you practice that? Like, how do you practice that? I mean, it's not like you have access to a stadium. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. But that's a lot of really great choreography, or really intricate, I guess I could say, choreography or dance. Some people loved it, some people didn't, whatever. But then you have the levels, right? So she's like way, way, way high, and then they're kind of, I don't know, I thought it was really cool. I enjoy all that.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
It was aesthetically pleasing because it was all just cool.
Yeah, I just didn't.
And it was a great announcement of her pregnancy, I felt like. It was an interesting way to announce her pregnancy.
Yeah.
Worked for me.
Francis asked, and he goes, "Is she pregnant?" So he's like, "Yeah." Oh, okay.
It was cool. I liked it. All right. So going back to one of the things that we talked about initially, and the reason that we wanted to do this show is because you were talking about the field and the variables that happen. So, you're playing football, you're playing on, when you're practicing, you're not practicing on a field that's been spray painted.
So normally they spray paint the logos and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But this time, apparently, they spray painted the whole field, and it was very difficult to get traction. And at one point in the game, they made a big deal about it because one team changed their cleats completely, and then the other team didn't. So that was a good example of a team trying to make adjustments based on the conditions that you had. I thought it was interesting that somebody made the comment, why did they do that when that's never been done before? And it obviously hurt with traction. So you had players that normally cut and make these really neat, plays are now limited to what they can do. Neither defense could get off to a good start and get to the quarterback, which was kind of sad because the Eagles have more sacks than any team in the NFL this year. It was, you got a quarterback in Mahomes that's not 100%. If they get to him, it totally changes the dynamic, but they couldn't get to him because I think the field was limiting their ability to be able to run defensive plays like they normally do. And now it didn't just hurt them, it hurt the other team as well. It's not like the Chiefs were getting to, the Eagles quarterback that much. And I just really thought it created a little bit too much of an offensive game because of that. But in both cases, both teams had to adjust. Now, here's the other interesting thing is we're talking about take a play that works and make it work more often. How many times have you seen a quarterback sneak work as much as you saw that in the Super Bowl? It's like Jalen Hurts was getting like 4 yards on a quarterback sneak. You don't see that in a quarterback sneak. So I'm wondering, how much does that have to do with the field? And then put in the fact that they are really good about running that play. They've got that play down. I was sitting there going like they could just run that play all the way down and score because the Chiefs couldn't stop.
That would not be fun to watch.
No, well, it would have been entertaining in the fact that that's probably never been done before.
I guess.
But how many you saw more quarterback sneak? Normally you don't see one in a game, and here you see a team. I think the Eagles won it 4 times. They were like 4 for 4, and that was I thought that was really interesting.
Kept doing it.
And they're like, "Look, this works. We need a yard or two. Let's go with it."
If
and
it works,
they proved. So both teams proved that when something's working, let's go back to it, and they were both successful. So that was really good key there is that both teams were successful doing that. Both teams were successful at making adjustments. One made adjustments to play calling, right, with the Chiefs. The other one made a change in their cleats to make adjustments on that. And I thought both of them were the right things to do, and it worked. And this is the highest pressure game in their sport in the season, and I thought that was fantastic to watch.
Why they're both in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they're going to be tough next year, too.
So when we're looking at lessons, one of the lessons that comes to mind to me based on this whole field situation is that you can't prepare in advance for all variables. So you have to be really good at adjusting on the fly based on the information that you're given in the moment. I feel like no matter what sport you're in.
Interesting you make that comment. So a week ago, I was watching a documentary on the Cowboys.
Okay.
Cowboy fan, and they're talking about Jimmy G. How good was Jimmy Johnson as a coach? And one of the players was talking about the getting ready for Super Bowl. I can't remember which one it was. I probably should have wrote down. I know one guy he remembers everything about the Cowboys. He's like, if you don't remember who did what and what year it was, just ask this guy. He knows.
He's like a Cowboy historian.
Yeah, my memory's not that good. But anyway, Jimmy goes out there early, and he's walking the field. He walks down and walks back. He's literally walking the field, like from the left side, goes down all the way. Yeah. And like, what is he doing?
He's getting his steps in.
So he comes in, he says, hey, and he tells his his offensive coordinator, and so when you run plays with Emmett doing this, when you do on this side of the field, because the other side of the field's too wet. So when they're depending which direction they were going, one side was more wet than the other one, so therefore it reduced his ability to cut.
So he would literally inspect the field.
He inspected the field. Yeah, here he inspected the field, and then he went to his coordinators and said, "Hey, look,
that's so
we
smart.
want to run a play here. We don't want to run that play that direction here. So remember, based on which side we're going, because coming back, now we could do what? We got to go the opposite side.
Right.
And so knowing that put them in a position to where now they have an advantage because what they do, they looked at the situation in advance, and made that. So sometimes I think you can do things to be prepared for the unexpected. But you're right. What do you do when the first half it's cold and it's cold, but there's not much wind? It's just cold. And you're like, okay, we're just playing in cold. But then it starts snowing.
Right.
And then halftime, you come back, and now the field is totally different than what it did before. You have to make those adjustments.
It's like that story about when Dad shot in the snow. Like, was it Switzerland?
Yeah.
World Championships.
Switzerland.
And he's like, I'm from Texas. I'm not a snow shooter. They're gonna call the match. We're not gonna actually shoot in this. And then they don't call the match.
They start the match.
And he's like, what? How? We can't even see the target. And then luckily, he's shooting right next to a Swiss. And that shooter is knowing when. He's like, I'm just going to pretend like I'm good at shooting in the snow.
Yeah, he's just like, wait a minute, that guy just shot. What's he doing? So he started watching him, and he noticed that he was getting ready. And then once it cleared, boom, he had a certain window.
Yeah.
And so he was mimicking the other shooter, and he wound up shooting really, really good.
He wound up winning, didn't he?
Yeah. But he would have won if he stayed focused on what he was originally doing.
But
he changed gears and said, wait a minute, what is that guy doing to get shots off?
He almost had to change his self-image. Like, I'm not a snow shooter too. I'm a snow shooter. Like, I can shoot in any condition, at any time, under any circumstance. He had to change the way he was talking to himself. And I would imagine these players probably would have to change the way they were talking to themselves if they start heading down a negative road.
Yeah, I'll agree. I agree with that one. I thought overall it was an excellent game. And
it was
so many different lessons. The other thing that I'll say is I made this point, we talked about the World Cup. Sometimes you can play your best and not win. There were some guys on the losing team of the Super Bowl that played phenomenal. Unfortunately, they don't get the Super Bowl ring. But you can't tell me they were losers on the field because they played great. They probably you can make an argument with 2 or 3 players on the Eagles that probably had their best game of the year. Definitely one of their best games of the year, if not their best game of the year. They showed up when they needed to. They made some fantastic plays, played the whole game out, deserving to win, but there's only one winner. And so it goes back to what we talked about the World Cup with Mbappe. Played great, played phenomenal, but his team didn't win the World Cup. But how is he a loser when he did so well?
If you're in the Super Bowl, you're not a loser in the first place. That's just how I look at it.
Well,
you
you
have a winning team, obviously.
I guarantee you, come September, someone's getting rings, someone's not.
I get it. You're going to recognize the team that was successful. I absolutely, but that doesn't mean that the individual players aren't also winners as humans, as athletes.
So I guess the question is going to be: is how many Super Bowls is Mahomes going to have by the time he retires?
I don't know. He's pretty fun to watch, and he's fun to listen to. Like, he's just a very positive, faithful guy. So I hope that he's around for a long time.
Well, they're banking on it. They gave him a good contract, and Kansas City loves him.
I hope so. I hope so.
So, any final thoughts on what lessons you got from the Super Bowl?
I think the main thing is just really adjusting to your variables, being very smart with the way that you play, and not letting the gravity of the situation get to your head. You have to play the game. You have to play each play as they come.
Smart.
And not thinking about, we could win the Super Bowl. And you think about that last play where, yes, he didn't go for the touchdown. He stopped shy of it on purpose. Then they run down the clock, and then they kick the field goal. Think about that kicker and what could have been going through his mind if he had allowed it. This is the Super Bowl winning field goal. But I would imagine he probably has a mental system that he runs that's consistent so that he could kick that game winning.
Yeah, I think it was going to come down to whoever had the ball last, probably going to win. And that's kind of how it played off. But hopefully you can take some of these lessons that we talked about and apply to what you do in your sport, in life and business, and be successful throughout 2023.
And when you watch these games, why not look for the opportunities to learn? Make it not only entertainment, but also education. Thank you so much. We're going to do a deep dive into some practical ways that you can adjust to the variables that may happen in your game or in your situation for our Patreon members. If you are not a Patreon member already, we welcome you to join us. I'll put a link in the comment section so you're able to sign up for our Patreon membership. Silver and gold level members will hear more from us soon.